Enough internet, it's not good for you. Find something else to do. At one point in your life, you've most likely heard a parent say this to you, and you would probably scoff at such a statement. But after the actions of Rachelle Waterman, perhaps you may start agreeing with your mother. For on the 13th of November 2004, her daughter would do something so unspeakably heinous to her mother, you would be taken well aback after hearing about it on the news. When we hear of family homicides, we often picture the most likely case: a father filled with murderous intent, a mother fearful for her life, and children confused as to what unfortunate tragedy is about to unfold in front of them. It's always the children who suffer the most in these stories, always the young deep eyes which are forced to watch as blood stains the walls and soaks into their memories. Yet in the case of Rachelle Waterman, the opposite was in effect. The child at the centre this time, right in the eye of the storm. Rachelle Waterman, 16, was born into the middle-class Watermans, a family who were notably active in their local community of Craig, Alaska, USA. The victim, her mother Laurie Waterman, 48, was employed as a teacher's aide for a local school. The father of the family, Carl Waterman, 60, was a real estate agent, also active in the community as president of the school's board. Rachelle also has a brother, Jeffrey, who resides elsewhere as a college student. Rachelle was a bright young woman, possessing various talents and passions, with everything from acting, music and movies, all the way to technology and sports. She participated in the school choir, represented them on the volleyball field, and even running miles for them in the decathlon. No achievement was too high for her to reach, no goal was too daunting. Surely this successful and talented young lady would stay on this path. Surely she could only go up from here, right? But on the 13th of November, what seemingly came out of nowhere would be considered anything but up for Rachelle and her family, and she would soon find her ability to succeed turning sinister, as what would be an entire conspiracy unfolding at her hand. At 12 a.m. on a Sunday, what would regularly be a day of peace and relaxation would be the beginning of the final moments of Laurie Waterman's life. In a matter of minutes, Laurie would find herself kidnapped by 24-year-old Radel, who would proceed to detain Laurie into a minivan that belonged to her own family. Radel had then proceeded to beat Laurie to death with an undisclosed blunt object. It was after this moment that Radel would travel to meet with co-conspirator Jason Arrant, also 24. They would meet at 2:30 a.m. at a nearby road, with Radel leading Arrant back to the minivan where Laurie's dead body was stored. It was then that Radel would prepare to dispose of the body by covering it in gasoline and setting it alight in order to cover their tracks and hide the evidence of their atrocity. So where does Rachelle fit in? How are we certain that a daughter would slay her mother? How do we know that this was what Rachelle wanted, that she was even involved in this? It's not every day that a daughter takes her mother's life. Shortly after the burning of Laurie's body, a hunter had stumbled across the aftermath of this cold, nefarious deed while driving on the same road that Laurie's killers had been on when they disposed of their evidence. It wasn't too long before Arrant and Radel had been caught and questioned about their involvement in this horrific act. But at the same time, Rachelle was also being questioned. Physical evidence was reportedly found at the scene of the crime which indicated involvement of not only Arrant and Radel, but Rachelle Waterman as well. Due to the nature of the crime, Waterman, 16, was tried as an adult for first-degree murder along with both her co-conspirators, Arrant and Radel. But physical evidence can only go so far, right? How can we know for sure that Rachelle was involved, or even worse, behind this? Why would a daughter kill her mother? What could have pushed Rachelle into these dark, foreboding actions? What triggers such a movement? During the trial, while no motive for why Rachelle had taken her mother's life was present, many online blog posts made by Rachelle may serve as an insight as to what exactly was going on in her head that pushed her to do the inconceivable. In February 2004, Rachel had posted the following on her online journal. Don't you hate it when the little pieces of shit pile up to the point you're at breaking point and you want to scream and cry at the same time? I don't know whether to kill somebody, myself, or just curl up into the fetal position under my covers and lay there for a couple of days. Either way, I'm not good. Already, there were disturbing signs. Rachelle discussing the idea of killing another individual or herself, neither of which could be considered at the time a good sign. It was clear Rachelle was far from mentally okay, seeming to be suffering from many problems in her life. One in particular may have served as the catalyst for this depraved plot to eliminate her mother, as the following post reveals. My mum finally gave me back the right to eat, but wants to send me to fat camp this summer. I think it's rather hilarious. I mean, I agree I'm chunky, but if she sends me off, I'll be the skinny girl and get sat upon. That part wouldn't be funny, but overall it's quite amusing. Silly mother. It becomes clear that a slow-burning conflict between Rachelle and her mother had been developing months prior to her murder. No child likes to be told what to do after all, but could this been the first steps towards Laurie's slaughter? Further on, another conflict had occurred, this time centering around Rachelle's results on a school test. After receiving less than the desired mark from said test, Rachelle's mother had proceeded to discipline her via grounding her, forbidding any attempt to leave the house. In response, Rachelle had once again turned to the internet in order to post the following comments on her blog. "Well, I'm grounded. Last night my mum went psycho bitch on me and cast me out, so I went to crash at someone's house and then she freaked, wanted me home in case I told someone. We for loving parental units. I even got to fly down the stairs." It becomes more reasonable to believe that Rachelle and her mother Laurie had a very strained relationship, ranging from disagreements about her academic performance all the way to her diet and physical health. While these are common points of argument amongst most parent-child relationships, it becomes evident that in the case of Rachelle, a burning hatred was growing within, all for her mother. Rachel's online blog was designated "My Crappy Life, the inside look of an insane person," which already points to not only a negative image of herself, but a critical outlook on her situation in life, with Rachelle describing her town of residence as being called Hell, Alaska, United States. Many times, Rachelle had reinforced her statement about this point of view, stating things like, "I live in the suckiest place on earth, a shithole in Alaska." Whether or not this was due to the location itself, or more so her experience living in Craig, Alaska, is anyone's guess. A few months down the track in August 2004, Rachelle had posted a rather concerning and saddening poem to her online blog, with said post pointing towards thoughts of depression and despair for her situation and problems going on in her life. The poem reads, "They hold the key to my chamber, locked within its depths, never to see the sunlight, and contemplating death. Starving more than one way, soul and body combine. The pain curses through, sending chills up the spine. Will I live to see the stars, the sunrise once more, or will I wither and rot, my heart gone forevermore?" After reading such a poem, it becomes obvious that Rachelle's mental state was deteriorating more as the year went by, with her relationship between her and her mother following closely in tow. Being grounded many times for her transgressions was affecting her negatively in a psychological way, to the extent that her very mental health was tipping on a knife's edge, her sanity in the balance and slowly edging forward. Due to how she felt at home, as well as several other factors, Rachelle had discussed online that she desired a job in order to take up some of her time and allow her to exist outside of her home. At the same time, Rachelle had posted what can only be described as an ode to suicide, indicating how she was feeling at the time, both about her situation and her feelings of loneliness due to her isolation at her parents' hands. Ever feel completely alone? All the people who you care about and you thought cared about you just leave and you're just alone, nobody to connect with, nobody to comfort you when you find out you might die, nobody, nothing. Ode to suicide. Pain consumes my body, eating away like lie, tearing at my flesh, no more tears left to cry. Nobody loves me, nobody cares. Why continue on? I want out of these snares. Relief and release is what you bring to me. No more matters to cry for. I can finally be free. Wow, I suck amazingly at poetry. In this last poem, it becomes increasingly possible for Rachelle to have taken the steps to organise the death of her mother. While the motive was not entirely clear, it's more than arguable that Rachelle's anger developed through the year into a murderous hatred and a desire to see her mother's life come to an end. Rachelle's pre-final entry into her blog involved her mentioning having a migraine within the time frame of 9 AM to 6 PM on the exact day her mother had met her end. With this excuse, as well as the various online posts of malicious and tormented nature, Rachelle would serve as the prime suspect behind the planned demise of her own mother. Rachelle was taken into custody shortly after and in 2006 was found guilty of negligent homicide, resulting in a 3-year prison sentence, considering her age in both a legal and mental context. As of today, Rachelle is a free woman who still posts on the same blog where she once spiraled into this tragedy born from anger of a scorned child. No matter how many times we may fight and argue with our parents, it can be said for most that such a conflict is temporary, but in Rachelle's case, this was a permanent act, and now Rachelle is permanently marked as the child who slew the mother.